Hello everybody, this is part 3 of my Paragon tutorial series. Today I'm going to be teaching you about the carry role and more about farming and a little bit about rotations and Fangtooth, I guess. So, to start it off, I'm gonna just give you an introduction to the purpose of the carry role. So, carries. If you look at all of them here, like Revenant, Sparrow, don't pay attention to Wraith's attribute things because, as I mentioned in the past, they're kind of outdated, but generally you'll see they have a high basic attack. So what this basically means is that carries in the early game, they don't have much. They have low basic attack damage, they have low ability damage, they have low health, they're very, very weak. However, later on, through leveling up and getting attributes and cards, they become very strong, and they end up having a lot of attack speed, and they end up dealing a lot of damage. They are a team's main source of sustained damage per second, so that means damage that never stops coming. As long as you can click, you can deal damage, basically. So, as opposed to, like, a mid laner, or caster, or mage, or whatever you want to call them, they'd have, cooldowns, and they deal a lot of damage at once, but after their cooldowns come on, or they run out of mana, they can't do much. But a carry, they can keep giving that damage. So, on a team, it's very important for your carry to be able to scale up to the late game when they can start dealing a lot of damage. Because at that point, they can easily kill enemies, they're important in team fights, they can take objectives very quickly, they can absolutely melt towers, Fangtooth, or Prime with some help, because they still don't have much health. Carries deal a lot of damage, but with very little health. So, what should you focus on building on a carry? Your decks should ideally have a lot of attack speed, a lot of damage, and you should definitely be focusing mostly on agility. You want to put almost everything into agility. Like my carry decks, sometimes, as you can see here, I have 1 healing towers, gem, and vitality. Sometimes I don't even use that. I just put 1 point into vitality, so if I ever feel like I'm taking a lot of damage in the duo lane, I can just put that on. But yeah, so here I just mostly focus on agility until I fill it out. And after that I go into vitality or intellect as needed. But yeah, and if you look at most of the cards I'm using here, they cost a lot of agility. So one thing you'll notice about carry cards in general is if I look at them. The strongest of them cost 13 agility. There are a lot of 13 agility cards. If I scroll into order here, you see there's Knight of Asher, and back here there's obviously Deathcrawler and Shatter Golem. And then if I go into intellect here, there's an 8 agility and 4 intellect. Now that's 12 attribute points in total, so that's kind of the exception, but just keep that in mind. And if you look at a carry deck, I'll just pick this one, you get a lot of strong gems at slot 13 in agility. You've got multi-shot, you've got lifesteal, you've got mana generator, which are all very important cards. Gems, I mean. Mana generator is only really good if you're using the card OPD Militia, but I'll get into that more later. Multi-shot, I generally don't recommend it. Lifesteal is my #1 recommendation for a slot 3 carry gem. And then, again, if you look at the end of agilities, so this slot here, you see more very powerful gems. So Bounty Stalker, Critical Hits, and Relentless Pursuit. They are all very strong options to use. So this gets into a term generally applied to carries known as power spiking. This is when just at a certain point in the game, a carry gets a lot stronger than they were previously. So generally, this is the main power spike is usually once a carry reaches 13 agility, so around the mid-game. So at this point, you can get powerful cards like Knight of Asher or Shatter Golem or OPD Militia. OPD Militia, in that case, you'd have 8 agility and 4 intellect, but it's still 12 attribute points. So it's around this range here, basically. And then at that point also you can get some of your most powerful gems, Multi-Shot, Lifesteal, or Mana Generator. So that's very important to keep in mind. So as a carry, one of the main things you want to focus on is, and you know, I mentioned it in the mid lane video, you always want to be focusing on farming. Always, always, always. Yeah, kills are important, and taking objectives is important, but those will come naturally with a lot of farming. So, for the first 10 minutes of the game, at least, you want to just be constantly farming, farming, farming. You want to be out of lane as little as possible, and keep in mind that if you're going to die, you want to leave, because as a carry, other than farming, you need to be as safe as possible. You want to be playing more safe than any other role, probably. You do not want to be taking risks, because taking risks will put the enemy ahead of you, and it will make your later game harder. So you always want to be staying alive, you always want to be farming, and you always, well, the thing with the duo lane is it's called the duo lane for a reason. You're going to have a support there. They're basically what's going in the early game to keep you alive, or at least try to keep you alive and safe and help you with that farm. So their main goal is to keep you alive. So you literally have a person on your team trying to keep you alive, ideally. So you need to make the most of that the most out of that as you can. You want to take advantage of that. Now keep in mind, this doesn't mean that when your support makes mistakes, you should flame them or whatever. You always want to be nice to them. You always want to be good to them. They are basically your best friend in the game. And they are putting a huge investment into you, so never forget that. But yeah. So you always want to be farming. You always want to let your support help you. And one thing I see a lot of carries do is, well, sometimes a thing that good supports do is, if stuff is really starting to go wrong, if it's looking like one of you is gonna die, they might even go as far as giving their life up to keep you alive. That's the extent that some supports will go. So you want to make the most out of that. You don't want to lose their investment that they're putting in you. But anyways, after that thing, I'm going to go into a game. I'm going to put it at a slightly higher difficulty now, just so the game can last longer. And we'll start. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put this at a different difficulty to make it more realistic. So, one thing you need to keep in mind is, as a carry, farming is very important. So you want to definitely learn how to get those last hits consistently all the time. Now, the thing with the lower difficulties in bot games is that they lower the health of minions. Which, if you're learning a role like carry, you want it to be as realistic as possible. So I'm going to put it to intermediate, because at this difficulty, the minion health is okay, and this is the highest actual difficulty that the AI is. Now, at experienced and veteran, the bots themselves are actually given buffs to make them harder to kill. But, yeah, let's just go with this. Alright, so I'm just going to select the carry role, and as you can see, there's a lot of options here. I'm going to pick Sparrow, because I'm trying to master her right now, so I want as much XP as possible for her. But you can really pick anyone you want. For a basic tutorial, I don't recommend Revenant or one of the melee carries like Sereth or Wukong or Yin, because they don't really give you a good idea of what the carry role is like, generally. Like, Revenant, he's a lot different than other carries, and the melee carries, they generally have a hard time in the duo lane, and they just don't really give you the practice you need as a carry. So yeah, you can basically select whatever deck you want. You know, there's the Agility Marauder deck, which is a very good option for a carry, but I have my own deck here, which I usually use. But whatever you do, if you decide to make your own deck, you want to remember to have all that damage all the time. You want a lot of damage, and if I open up the shop here, you'll see that right away I put something into Agility. For just a tiny bit of attack speed and basic armor, and then I get my auto health potion gem, which just helps keeping me alive early game. So I'm just gonna upgrade that there. And so I'm gonna wait here at this tower until my support gets here. Now, the supports in the bot games, they don't exactly act like they should in real games, so it's gonna make this a little bit tough. So in my second carry video, much later in the series, I'll have a support with me in the game to try to make it better. So as you can see, they're attacking the minions. You never want your support to do that in a real game, basically. It's okay if they do, but what you always want to try to do is to make your farm as safe as possible. You don't want to be... If you can, you just want to play as safe as possible. You want to keep the minions as close to your tower as possible. Because what that'll do is it'll make it easier for your jungler and mid laner to rotate over. Sorry, just... Also, I said you want to try to keep the minions close, but generally, if you can, try to keep them out of your tower, because it makes it harder for you to get the last hits, because the tower will damage them, so it's, kind of, you know, a bad idea to get them right in the tower. But if you can keep them here at the river, or even here, it's a very good idea. Now, I had a bit of lag there, so I'm taking more damage than I should be. So generally in a real game right now, I definitely want to be back here if I had this amount of health. Because basically, I don't want to die. I don't want to give them an advantage. And if, you know, if the jungler comes out here, or from up there, I don't have much to run to get to safety, or relative safety. But yeah, as you can see, I'm not doing much of a good job of keeping them out of tower, which is hurting me when it comes to last hits. So you always want to keep that in mind. Now, at this point, I took a lot of damage. I'm definitely going to go back. But this gives me time to purchase healing towers, to put another point into agility, which will help me later on. So at this point, I want to make sure... I'm gonna look at how many last hits the enemy carry has, what they're building, to get a good idea of what I should be looking out for. So right now, yeah, they're equal with me at last hits. They only put one attribute in, so, you know, I'm still basically fine. So we're just gonna keep this going. And, you know, I'll probably edit this out because it's just a lot of farming, a lot of... damn. Yeah, it's just a lot of farming, a lot of what most people would consider relatively boring stuff. So at this point, they're running away, but they're too far. I don't wanna take too much of a risk. But now that Drongo's coming back out here, being in a bad position, I can do that. And there, boom, there's a kill. So getting kills, if you can manage it, if it's not gonna put you in too much danger, if you're sure that you can get a kill as a carry, it's a very good idea to do so, because that gives you a lot of gold, and a lot of experience, which is gonna allow you to just get more attribute points. So I'm kind of worried about how close this lane is, so I'm gonna... Damn it, Decker. Damn it, Decker. I'm kind of gonna let the lane, if I can, try to push up a bit, because in a real game, this would be the perfect opportunity for the jungler to gank. Now I'm just gonna grab the gold buff here for some extra gold. Oh, and as you can see, there's Rampage, and my support's gonna die. You see, we were pushed all the way up, like, all the way up to the tower. So it was very easy to kill Decker. She had a very long distance to run, which, you know, made it pretty, bad for her. And now, I just lost a lot of last hits there, and the enemy carry has some more gold, because they killed the support, and, yeah, so I'm having a little bit of trouble now. But yeah, as you can see, I'm not putting a huge focus on kills. I just want to get all these last hits as much as possible. Did she just jump again? Damn it, Decker. God damn it, Decker! What? Yeah, and, you know, we're pushed all the way up here again. This is a bad idea. It's putting us into a very unsafe position, and our jungler would have a hard time getting anything from over here, because, you know, if our jungler wants to attack, everyone's just right there. They're in basically no danger. And, you know, Decker backing right there is probably a bad idea. But yeah, so I'm not gonna attack until the absolute last second. So I can... Oh my... Now, that probably would have been a good time to try to maybe kill Drongo. However, the support is still full health with a high amount of mana, so they can still deal a lot of damage to me, as you can see there. So it's probably not the best option to try to go for Drongo, unless he were to get very, very far out of position. And as you can see, the lane was pushed all the way up there again, and Decker died. So, you always want to try not to do that. And as you can see here, I'm just putting in attribute points, trying to get the best cards that I can possibly get at this point in the game. And if you've noticed in some games where I just get attribute points without opening the menu, it's because I have the attribute buy set to F1, F2, and F3, so I can get them easier. Now that is... There we go. But yeah, now at this point, I have a reasonable amount of attack speed, so I can start being more aggressive, trying to pick off a kill, and as you can see, they're all... Oh, okay. They're all very, very close to, the tower, so they have a lot of distance to run. As you can see from that, I got a lot of gold. So... Oh my... I'd get, you know, I just got a lot of gold, so I can put that in, and I'm at 11 agility now, so I'm getting very close to that power spike I told you about at 13 agility. Now, since we killed both of them, we can kind of start being a little bit more aggressive to this tower. And since I have a good card, we might even be able to take this down. Boom. There's that. Now, at this point, we should probably retreat. Just gonna grab gold buff there. So now, after we probably kill any one of them, if all of the rest of our team is alive, since we have the dual lane tower down, it would be a good idea to attack Fangtooth. Now I'm gonna stay here, get a little bit more gold so I can get to that power spike at 13 agility. Now, since my support isn't here, I'm gonna be very careful, because I'm at a disadvantage to them now, kind of. Oop, yeah. But now, I really don't want to leave this lane at this point. Oh, geez, he just shredded my basic armor with that ability, so I'm gonna take more damage from him. And yeah. So that was a very risky engagement, but in the end I won. So at this point I should probably immediately go back, but I want to get this lane set first. But yeah, as you can see, I'm still focusing on getting those last hits. You never want to stop focusing on that. You always want to try to get them as much as possible. So I'm just gonna grab that, open that up, and switch this out with Knight of Asher, which is my power spike card, basically. So now I'm going to be doing much more damage. As you can see, the mid lane is under attack, and my lane is being pushed. So at this point, what I'd probably try to do is rotate over, see if we can get anything done there. Or if not, yeah, see, she's all the way out there. I can probably come around. Ooh, shadow buff. You know, see if I can pick something out here. If alright, never mind. Well, alright. That was unfortunate. But at this point, a couple of them are dead. Now, if the rest of the team would come here, now would be a good time to attack Fangtooth. Now, let's just assume for the sake of the tutorial that the rest of my team is here helping, because in a real game you should never try to solo it like this. It's a very bad idea. You can end up, you know, bad things could happen. You could even get team wiped. Well, not team wiped. You could get killed, and then everything else on the map would be at an advantage for the enemy team, and they could, you know, pick out a few, get a few picks, which are just kills, as they could, and snowball into a game-winning advantage. Alright, I'm gonna be careful here, because he just used his ult, which is gonna shred my basic armor, so I'll take more damage from him. But yeah. Alright, Muriel just left. So now, I think I'm gonna be... Well, thank you, Decker. Yep, I needed the support there for sure. Anyways. I'm just gonna push my lane, set it a little bit more, and then I'm gonna check on the map to see if there's anywhere where a team fight is going on. Now, generally at this point, you know, the entire enemy team would mostly be on the right lane there trying to defend that tower. Right now they're in mid because it's being pushed, but generally you wouldn't see that in a real game. And ooh, another shadow buff. I'll take that. So I'm just gonna go mid here and see if I can help out with the team. So this is a good time to talk about positioning. Generally, you want to be behind the rest of your team in a safe position, but since I have the shadow buff here, I could easily just engage. Now, there's only one of them there, so you know, it probably wasn't the most efficient use of my ult. Sparrow's ult, honestly though, doesn't do much. So, you know, there's a few cases where it can be useful. And just so you know, your lane responsibility never falls on somebody else. So you always want to make sure that you protect your lane, your objective, basically. You want to protect it, you want to keep it alive. As much as you can. Now, as I said in videos before, it's not that much of a big deal if you lose your tier 1, but you definitely want to prevent it. So now there's 3 people here, for some reason. I guess it's because this is the only tier 2 left. So we can kind of try and put some more pressure on this, as long as the other lanes are pushing towards them, so somebody has to pay attention to those. Alright, so, since they're not all here, we can start doing a little bit of damage. Now, you definitely want to look at the enemy team, see who they have, see if they have maybe a Gideon or a Steel who could... who could, like, CC your entire team and possibly cause you to lose the fight. And now, we could probably go after this inhibitor, because a few of them are dead, and the enemy team really isn't in a position to defend too much, because they lost most of their team fight potential in that last fight. Alright, at this point in a real game, I definitely want to retreat, because I am in an unnecessarily dangerous thing right now. You don't want to do something like that, because you have a risk of dying. And look at that. While we were doing that, while we were going after that inhibitor, the rest of our lanes were under attack. Now, honestly, if you can take out an inhibitor... oh, and look, my team just got Fangtooth. Nice. If you can take out an inhibitor, your towers, you can let them go down, honestly. Maybe not a tier 2, you can kind of, maybe, let that stay, try as hard as you can, but really, going for an inhibitor is above everything. Now, if you see here, I'm not putting in extra cards, that's because Knight of Asher here is an elevate card, which means that it gets a bonus if it's the only card you have equipped. Now later on you can, you know, put some other cards in there because to get more utility, because it's still a very good card without that bonus. Some cards are arguably better, but I like the consistency of the damage that, does anyone need mana? Does anyone want this? Maybe not. I like the consistency of damage that Knight of Asher gives. Now, Chimera's here in the jungle, so I can probably look around in here, see what's going on. But, alright, here we go. There's an inhibitor here. I'm gonna go after this. Alright, so, that's done. Now I can probably go for this lane and try to take this inhibitor out. Because that team's respawn timers are pretty long, not as long as they'd usually be in a PvP game by this point, but still. There... Oh, the team's trying to attack Orb Prime, apparently. So, I think I'll go there, help Chimera. Now, generally you'd want to ping your team when this happens, so, you know, what happens with Gadget didn't just happen. Oh, he's gonna run away, because he didn't wait for anything else, so he took all the damage from Orb Prime. And, you know, it was easy for him to die from that, so, you know, you always want to group up with your team to fight. Orb Prime. So now, as you can see, I maxed out agility, so now I'm starting to build a little bit into vitality. Because that will allow me to get some more cards at the end game. I might be able to take this out. Now, this would be very risky in a real game, because, you know, their entire team is here, I'm alone, but since this is a bot game, you know, I'm very far ahead of them, so I could probably... So one thing you want to always try to do as a carry is try to focus enemies down. Because if you focus, you know, the riskiest enemies at first, so generally you want to go, depending on who, you know, has had an easier game for themselves, who has the better cards and whatever, you generally want to go for the carry, then possibly the mid laner or jungler, then the solo laner, and then finally the support. Now, obviously if somebody is very low health and you can get them, but, other than that, you just want to try to take out the biggest threats first. Now, your team should be helping you with that. Your jungler and support should be helping peel the enemies off of you, so you can deal more damage without having a risk of dying. Okay, didn't even have to help with that. But yeah, as you can see now, we have the Orb Prime buff, so we're going to be very powerful. And this will probably allow us to do the final push, which ends the game. Alright, I have my ult up here, so I can start ripping through these waves here and rampage, and maybe if I can get over here in time I can... Oh, yeah, bad idea, bad idea, bad idea. Never do that. Please never do that. Alright, I'm gonna activate one of my cards here, slot 2, so I can get some lifesteal. So I can, yeah, we're just gonna go after the core here. Alright, there we go. Game over. Now, I probably wasn't playing my best there because, you know, I was talking the whole time, but, that was that game, basically, and that's the basics of being a carry. So yeah, as you can see here, I've got very damage-oriented cards, except for Vampiric Blade. That's for... Lifesteal is generally a carry's option for sustain. So, you know, lifesteal, go for it if you want. It's not too important, but yeah. So, and if you look at the other carry, you know, Shatter Golem, Swift Hunter, decent build, yeah. Maybe a bit confused on what it wants to be, but other than that, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next episode.